The planet was called Earth. Ridiculous name. Truly, the beings living on it had named it after dirt. Actual dirt, not after their sun. Not after the magnificent blue swirling storms that wrapped it like a gift no one asked for. Not after any of the 17 major civilizations that had risen and collapsed on its surface, like badly planned dinner parties. No, they named it after the ground they stood on. The Council of Stellar Minds had laughed for 3 full rotations when that particular translation came through. My name is Varro, Scout Class Observer, assigned to Sector 7, Outer Fringe Monitoring Division. And before you ask, no, I did not volunteer for this assignment. I was voluntold. There is a difference, and it is a painful one. The mission was simple, as all catastrophic missions begin. Monitor the humans. Record behavior. Do not interfere. Do not make contact. And above all else, do not let them see the ship. 3 instructions. 3. I failed all of them in under 6 rotations. But let me back up, because the story deserves its proper beginning, even if that beginning involves me sitting inside a vessel the size of a modest dwelling, orbiting a planet at a distance carefully calculated to avoid detection by creatures who, and I say this with professional respect, had only recently stopped arguing about whether the world was flat. My co-observer was a being named Tolla, short, 4-armed, perpetually drinking something warm from a container she refused to share. Tolla had been doing this job for longer than most stars have been burning, and she had the attitude to match. She would watch the humans do something astonishing, then write it down in her notes with the same expression one uses when observing mold grow on bread. Thorough, unmoved, maddening. Varro, she said, on the morning everything started going sideways. They are launching another object into orbit. I pressed my face to the observation screen. Sure enough, a sleek metallic tube was punching through the atmosphere below us on a column of control fire. The humans called this technology. We called it adorable. Standard satellite, I said. Ignore it. This one is different, Tolla said, not looking up from her notes. The signal pattern is not standard. It is not pointing outward. It is pointing up. At us. There was a pause. A very long pause. The kind of pause that precedes the sort of conversation no one wants to have. Define at us, I said. At us, she repeated, pointing one of her 4 arms directly at the ceiling of the ship. Specifically, precisely, this satellite has a sensor array that is locked onto our exact position, and it has been transmitting for the last 14 minutes. I stared at the screen. I stared at Tolla. I stared at the screen again. That, I said slowly, is not supposed to be possible. No, she agreed. And yet, the humans were not supposed to be able to detect us. The cloaking array on our vessel was built using technology that their greatest scientific minds would not theorize for another 400 years minimum. We were invisible. Completely, absolutely, definitively invisible. This was a fact, verified and certified by the finest engineers the Council had ever produced. And yet a species that had, not 40 years prior, been banging rocks together in what they called a Cold War, had somehow pointed a satellite directly at us like a finger at a guilty child. I pulled up the transmission data. The signal was not a weapon. It was not a warning. It was a greeting. A carefully constructed mathematical sequence designed to communicate intelligence across any language barrier. Prime numbers. Basic geometric ratios. And then, buried inside the data like a note slipped under a door, a single sentence translated from 17 different human languages simultaneously. It said, "We know you are there. Please do not leave. We have so many questions." Tolla set down her warm drink. I sat back in my chair. Outside, the planet continued to spin with the cheerful indifference of something that had survived asteroid impacts and ice ages and somehow produced beings who could look at a blank sky and know, with quiet certainty, that they were not alone in it. Tolla, I said very carefully. Yes. Contact the Council. Already sending. Tell them that the humans found us. Yes. Also tell them, I added, that I wanted on record that this was not my fault. She looked at me for a long moment with those flat, unreadable eyes of hers. Then she picked up her warm drink again. Varro, she said, it is absolutely your fault. The Council of Stellar Minds responded in 42 minutes. That was, for context, the fastest response in recorded interstellar history. Faster than the breach of Kalova. Faster than the supernova miscalculation of Sector 3. Faster even than the time someone accidentally broadcast a council meeting to 40,000 inhabited systems, and every species in the galaxy heard Counselor Brexa mispronounced the word diplomacy 6 times in a row. The message was short. It read, "Do not move, do not respond, do not panic." I was already doing all 3. The satellite continued its transmission below us, patient and steady, like a dog sitting at a door it absolutely knew would eventually open. The mathematical sequence looped every 9 minutes. The greeting repeated. The invitation stood. And somewhere on that spinning dirt-named planet, a group of humans was gathered around a screen, holding their collective breath, waiting to see if anyone would answer. I pulled up the visual feed on the inhabited region that had launched the satellite. A room full of them. Maybe 30, maybe 40. Different sizes, different shades, all of them leaning toward their instruments with an intensity that I found both impressive and deeply unsettling. One of them, a smaller one near the front with close-cropped dark hair, was pacing back and forth with the focused energy of someone who had not slept in several days and considered this a reasonable life choice. "That one," Tolla said, pointing, "that one designed the detection array." "How do you know?" "Because that one," she said, "keeps looking at the ceiling." I looked. The human near the front had stopped pacing and was staring upward, not at anything visible, just up, in the way that beings do when they are thinking hard about something that exists beyond what their eyes can reach. There was something in that expression, something I did not have a proper word for in my language, but that translated roughly into the human concept of stubborn hope. The council sent a second message 20 minutes later. It said, "Await further instructions." I sent back a message that said, "The humans are still transmitting." The council replied, "We are aware." I sent, "They are very patient." The council replied, "So are we." Tolla made a sound that, coming from a four-armed being who claimed to have no sense of humor, was remarkably close to a laugh. Then the satellite did something new. It stopped transmitting the mathematical sequence. The prime numbers, the geometry, all of it went quiet, and in the silence, it sent something else. A single image, rendered in basic pixel data, simple enough that a first-year cartography student could decode it. The image showed 2 shapes. One was a rough drawing of their planet, small and round and slightly lopsided, the way a child might draw it. The other shape was something that looked, with uncomfortable accuracy, like our ship. Beneath both shapes was a single symbol, a question mark. I stared at it for a very long time. Tolla stared at it too. "They drew us," I said. "Badly," she noted. "That is not the point." "No," she agreed. "The point is they knew enough to draw us at all." Here is what the council had never fully appreciated about humans, the thing that every observer report had tried to communicate and every committee had softened and summarized into comfortable language until the actual meaning dissolved entirely. Humans were not impressive because of what they had built. They were not remarkable because of their satellites or their signals or their stubborn refusal to accept that the universe was too large to care about them. They were remarkable because of the gap. The astonishing, vertiginous gap between what they knew and what they refused to stop reaching for anyway. They had no confirmation that anything was out there. They had no proof, no response, no signal returned. For generations, they had been shouting into a sky that gave them nothing back. And they kept shouting, not because they were naive, not because they were foolish, but because somewhere in the architecture of that species, giving up had simply never been coded as an available option. I made a decision, a professional one, naturally, completely within the bounds of reasonable observer conduct. I transmitted back, not the greeting sequence, not a mathematical code, just the image they had sent, mirrored exactly, with one small addition. Beneath their lopsided drawing of our ship, I added a second question mark. Their question returned, as if to say, "Yes, we are here, and we are just as curious about you." Tolla put down her drink very slowly. "Varro, I know." The council specifically said, "I know what the council said. You are going to receive a very long message. I am aware. Below us, In that room full of sleepless humans, the pacing one near the front stopped walking, looked at the screen, looked up at the ceiling again, and then, slowly, with the kind of smile that needs no translation across any language barrier in any corner of the known galaxy, smiled. The council's message arrived 11 seconds later. It was, as Tolla predicted, very long. It used the word unauthorized 14 times. It used the word breach 9 times. And somewhere near the end, buried under layers of formal reprimand and procedural consequence, was a single line that the writer had perhaps not intended to leave in. It read, "Proceed with caution, and do not embarrass us." I looked at the planet below. The satellite was quiet now, waiting. The humans were waiting. The whole magnificent, dirt-named, stubbornly alive little world was waiting. "Tolla," I said, "already preparing the contact protocol." She replied. Outside, the stars held their breath. And for the first time in a long and thoroughly documented history of first contact operations, the species being contacted was the calmest one in the room.